Ever since the first use of the atomic bomb on the Japanese in 1945 and the Cold War that began after Yalta in the same year, the U.S. had been on its toes to defend itself against enemy nations. The Cold War, a bloodless yet intense rivalry between the U.S. and the Soviet Union, entailed a paranoia-induced arms race, a fierce competition between these superpowers to produce more nuclear weapons than the other as quickly as possible, so as to pose as great a threat as possible, as a dramatic form of defense. Throughout the second half of the 20th century, the U.S. had been developing new technologies for this purpose, and creating newer and more advanced ones to replace them. This pattern, which had firmly established the technological leadership of the U.S., has been taken up by the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, known by the acronym DARPA. Let's get a first-hand account of what DARPA is all about. Hey, Uncle Carl, mind if I ask you a few questions?
CBS Television presents a special report on Sputnik 1, the Soviet space satellite.
Well, there's very profound concern here, Doug, about world opinion. The dominant conflict of our time, the Cold War, is at present, as everyone knows, in a state of balance between Russia and the West, and in between are those people who are called uncommitted, who may determine who wins, the peoples of Asia, the Near East, and Africa. Russia already enjoys one great attraction for these important peoples, and their ambition is to pull themselves up from primitive agrarian countries to become modern industrial nations. They tend to admire Russia as a nation which was once as backward as they, but which did pull herself up. And now that backward Russia has beaten the West's most advanced nation into the fringes of outer space, their admiration for Russia can be expected to increase. And there may be another consequence. Russia has in recent months been threatening nations who grant bases to America. Those threats have not been taken very seriously, but now the world knows that it took a far more powerful projectile than America possesses to push that satellite into its orbit in space. In view of that, Russia's threats may be more effective from now on. Probably no one here in the nation's capital would disagree with one thing that Senator Wiley said. We had better get on our toes. Now back to Douglas Edwards.
In 1958, a year after the Soviets had challenged the technical leadership of the U.S. by launching the world's first satellites, Sputnik 1 and Sputnik 2, DARPA was established to help the U.S. meet its rival back at eye level. My uncle worked at DARPA for several more recent years. First, what is DARPA and why do we have DARPA?
Well, as you know, DARPA is the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, and DARPA's official mission is to prevent technological surprise in the United States. But what that really means is that DARPA is the Defense Department and the intelligence community's advanced research agency that does science and technology discovery, development of materials, systems integration, with an eye towards identifying capabilities that could have a dramatic impact on how we do business in the United States security establishment, and then figure out how to pull technologies that aren't really expected to mature for 10, sometimes 20 years forward so that they mature at a much faster rate, sometimes in the 3 to 5 year time frame, so that they can be integrated quickly into the way we do business as a military.
Wow. What can you share with us that goes on at DARPA?
Well, actually, I like to joke that nothing goes on at DARPA. And the reason I say that is because there's really no test tubes or workbenches at DARPA. DARPA is a collection of people who are academically at the absolute peak of their career in their functional area. And they come to DARPA for 2 to 6 year terms. What they do is not conduct research, but they manage research. And so DARPA is full of somewhere around 100 specialists who develop programs and then take those programs out and find the best places for them to be managed, universities, government facilities, companies, wherever the real key researchers are, and then they leverage the facilities and the technical know-how of those people to actually execute the research. And the research spans a very broad spectrum. We have 2 offices at DARPA that we consider to be component level offices. So that's the Defense Science Office and the Microsystems Technology Office, and those offices focus on very basic science across the entire spectrum of what you would expect: material science, kinetics, energetics, communications, MEMS, you name it, DARPA's got a finger in it. And then we have a number of systems offices, and they focus more on taking those components and other components that are developed at the cutting edge of technology throughout America and integrating them into systems that will have some advanced capability, again, for the Defense Department and the intelligence community.
Is DARPA unique to our country?
Well, DARPA is unique. So every country, well, that's not true. Every country that is sort of a pure competitor to the United States, so that would be, China, Russia, all the major countries in Europe, Japan, Korea, all of those countries have some science and technology infrastructure that accompanies their, whatever their analogous component to the Department of Defense is. But DARPA is unique for a couple of reasons. I think the first one is because the philosophy there is most of the research done at DARPA is open. And by open, I mean it's done at universities, it's done in the unclassified realm, and it really is basic science that is designed to accelerate cool capabilities, not to secretly develop a cool capability. That's probably the most interesting, unique point about DARPA, where it differs from other countries' advanced S&T organizations.
Wow. How would you describe the influence of DARPA on our country and others?
In a word, I would say broad. And then I would further refine that by saying, DARPA has had a wide influence across almost every technology that you can imagine. People joke that DARPA created the internet. But it's not really a joke. The fundamental scientific and technical background of the internet is TCP/IP packaging of information. Basically, how we take little bits of data and distribute them around a very wide multipath distributed network and get them back together at the correct computer in a way that actually creates a picture or an image or sends a text message or an email or anything. And that fundamental science was done through a DARPA program at a couple of major universities in California. You take our space program from the very initial start, even before it was DARPA, back when it was just ARPA, the Advanced Research Projects Agency. A lot of the fundamental science behind how we do space flight, space travel, the nozzles for hypersonic flight, the communications capability to be able to send pictures to and from Mars. A lot of those things have their fundamental underpinnings in DARPA research. You look at all of the science behind the materials, the cool materials that allow us to have cell phones that are tiny and more powerful than computers were 10 years ago. Lots of that science, lots of the electronics behind that, lots of the MEMS, the micro electromechanical systems that allow your iPhone to figure out if it's facing up or down. All of those pieces had a start in some DARPA program somewhere and then went on to, obviously have an impact on the Defense Department and how we build and produce systems for the military. But also they have tremendous commercial applications.
Huh. Well, that sounds very interesting. It sounds like DARPA had a profound effect on our nation. Thanks very much, Uncle Carl.
You're very welcome.
Since today's standards of defense technology are at dizzying heights compared to those within the past century, present countries, including the U.S., would unfortunately need to pursue better, faster, and more efficient means of defense in order to survive in the modern world. As observed in Shakespeare's Macbeth, security is mortal's chiefest enemy. If the U.S. does not take these defensive precautions because we have lulled ourselves into a false sense of security, then we would be most vulnerable from the outside or from the inside. Of course, the best case scenario would be one in which we could put our minds, our energies, and our tax dollars to more peaceful, constructive use.